The next is we want to see the row count, because if you want to access the data one after another, we'll put it in a loop, and then for that loop we are supposed to know the number of rows in it. So worksheet dot used range, so we want the row count of the used range dot rows dot count. So this code gives you the count of the rows which are used in the worksheet. Okay, in our case it will be 4 because there are 4 rows which are occupied. So I'll put it in a variable I row since it's an integer, and then now in order to access the data one by one in a loop, I'll use a for loop, and the for loop will begin with I equal to 2 I row. Now the reason for beginning with 2 is because I won't be fetching the name and password, right? I won't be fetching the first column. I'll be starting with the second column, that is Shankar and Mercury. So I have to start with 2, okay? And the code will be the code for our flight application. So I'll quickly show you a simple code in order to automate the use the object model of Excel sheet. I'll add agent name, I'll add password, and I'll click on OK button, and I'll drag this steps to my for loop. Now if you see dot set, we want to take the agent name and password from our Excel sheet one by one. So the code for this, set cells dot value. So cells dot value gives you the value of the different cells in your sheet, and you obviously need to have the access to your sheet object, that is O worksheet dot cells dot value. So if you see, we are again following a particular hierarchy, that is the worksheet object dot cells. So cells are inside the worksheet, and this is the hierarchy which we are following. Now we need to give some index to the cell, right? In order to follow in order to fetch the value from a particular cell. So suppose this is the name which I want to fetch. So it will be 2, 1. 2 is the row number and 1 is the column number. This will be 2, 2. That is 2 is the row number and 1 is the column number. So my row number and column number will be over here in this bracket, and starting with R comma C, which is the row comma column. Now where will I get that row from? I'll get the row from I, the value of I over here, right? So it will be I, and the column will be 1 always, because for the agent name, I'm always fetching the values from the first column. And similarly for my password, it will be I comma 2, because I'm always fetching the value from my second column. So now if you see, we have parameterized agent name and password so that it is not hard coded, and script will pick the different values for different iterations of the for loop. So for the first iteration, that is when the value of I is 2, the cell value which is fetched is 2, 1 and 2, 2. So if you see 2, 1 is Shankar and 2, 2 is Mercury. For the second iteration of the loop, the value of I will be 3, and the values which will be fetched for agent name and password will be 3, 1 and 3, 2. And if you see in my Excel sheet, 3, 1 is Neha, 3, 2 is Mercury. So the second value will be Neha and Mercury. Of course, there will be the continuation to the script, wherein after I'm logging in, I'm performing some there has to be a part of code over here wherein I'm performing some operation on the application using different login ID and password, and after that I'll log out, and for the second iteration again I'll put the new agent name and password. Okay, so this was just to give you an example of the object model for Excel sheet works. You need to practice this like we had done for automation of object model. For automation of QTP, we can also use the same concept. That is, we are creating the object and then creating the object and then accessing the different objects in the hierarchy of the application, whether it's an Excel or QTP, doesn't matter. And then once we get the access to the particular hierarchy, to a particular object, we can perform the operations on that object. Okay, so now we'll continue with our data-driven framework. As I told you, I've taught you all the three methods wherein we can access the data from an Excel sheet. The first was directly importing the data from the data table. You have to just right click it and import from file, so the file will be imported on the data table. Second method was to use import data table.import or data table.import sheet to import the data in runtime into the data table, and from then after that we'll be accessing the data in the QTP from the data table. Okay, all this happens in runtime. And the third method which I showed you now is directly accessing the data from the Excel sheet without involving data table in between. Okay, so this was for Excel sheet. We also have methods for accessing data directly from Notepad. Okay, so I'll teach you this in our object model chapter. So for now what we'll do is we'll continue with framework, since that is what we are focusing on.